Do you yearn for travel that involves outdoor adventure and learning? I do. I also have a passion for all things farming and agriculture. I've traveled to exotic jungles to learn about growing chocolate. I even once owned my own organic vegetable and sunflower farm. And now I'm planning my journey back to agriculture. Agritourism, defined as travel that involves some type of agricultural experience. Agritourism is all about entertaining. But the marketing strategist in me knows that at its core, agritourism is really about educating, and education affects change. My future farm needs to deliver a profound experience to all of its visitors. It needs to educate people about food, health, and climate. Join me to learn from experienced agritourism farmers and entrepreneurs and help me build my future farm strategy. And who knows, maybe one day soon you'll find yourself in a tropical jungle cutting open cacao pods with a machete, or savoring an outdoor plant-to-plate community dinner with 100 guests at a farm in Illinois. So let's tap into the agritourist in you. Have you ever heard of the new River Gorge or the Gauley River? Well, if you've ever been into the whitewater rafting scene, you've heard of one of these West Virginia rivers and probably rafted it already. The new River Gorge is amazing in the spring, but there is nothing that compares to the fall dam releases of the Gauley River, entering into Class 5 rapids right from the very start of your rafting adventure. Speaking of a natural high. So when I saw this agritourism farm and campground that was located on the Gauley River pop up on my Instagram, I had to reach out. It brought back so many of my whitewater rafting adventure memories. Susan Tawney and her husband James own Tawney Farm, a small-scale wool sheep farm in the Mountain Lakes region of central West Virginia. Their sheep farm property offers a unique alternative to the overcrowded commercial campgrounds. Adjacent to the beautiful Gauley River National Recreation Area and just a short drive to the new River Gorge National Park, their 129-acre farm lies nestled in between two beautiful mountains, one of them named Panther Mountain in the Gauley River Gorge. You can even learn how to felt wool while staying there. In addition to all the river adventures that await visitors, Tawney Farm is also full of Civil War history and is the perfect spot for nature lovers, hikers, and birdwatchers. Let's take you on an adventure to the whitewater and majestic gorges of West Virginia. This is Jen Ross, your Agritourist podcast host. Enjoy my conversation with Susan Tawney. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I'm excited to talk about my, it's funny because I feel like when I went whitewater rafting first it was the New River. And I don't know, I'm trying to think of how we even got into it. I don't remember what the first river was. It might have been the New, and I wanted some adventure. And I found the New River. I was really excited. I mean, that was intense. Obviously the Gauley wasn't even an option at that time, because I think we did the New in the spring. Is that when... and then that big waterfall thing at the end, it was like, that was an adventure. And then we did the Gauley in the fall when the dam releases. Mm-hmm. And we did an overnight camping trip on the Gauley. And the time we went, there was a hurricane that was coming up the coast, and the rainstorms had come into, headed west, so they were getting tremendous rain. So the day we did the Gauley, it was raining tremendously. And the river was running so high that the guides, like all the normal rapids, were covered up, and there were these new rapids. And so they were kind of running blind on it. And then we camped, and that night it was still pouring rain. And then the next morning, it was the most majestically beautiful day, clear skies, but the river was running so fast and high that the second day on the Gauley was so fast. We literally it was like this full day trip ended up being it was really quick. And we stayed, I think was it class 6 or 5? 6. Okay.
Class 6.
Which was nothing like it looks now from what I've seen with the improvements. It was kind of the old version of it, but
Uh-huh.
it was an amazing experience, and it was so beautiful down in that area, like the gorge and walking around. It just was absolutely beautiful. So when I saw you on Instagram, what you're doing and where you're located, I was like, oh my God, I have to speak to them. That's just because those rivers are just, and like I said, that area that you're in is just so beautiful. People just don't realize that the beauty, West Virginia, especially, I love it. So, Susan, tell me about you, kind of like a little bit of your background, and then
Uh-huh.
lead us, and then we'll kind of get into the land that you're on, and the whole focus of your mission.
Okay. Well, I talk about this area. This is where I grew up. I actually lived in a little town on this river, on the Gauley River, just in the lower portion, like below where the kayakers get out, because it becomes still and deeper, and there's no rapids down there. But
Okay.
I basically grew up here. My husband grew up in a couple of counties over, just basically as the crow flies, just a mountain over.
I like
And
that.
neither one of us had any experience in farming when we found this place. We actually were living in my hometown when we used to come driving out this road. It's called Panther Mountain Road, and it's just a county road that it's about, oh, I don't know how long it is, maybe 10 to 15 miles long total. But we just come out here driving around, and found, actually went by one day and saw a big for sale sign on this property, and we were like,
Well,
I wonder if
tell me, yeah, tell
what
me
they're
what that
wanting for it.
was. What was that interest? Like what was like charging you in that
Well, we were
moment?
just kind of, we'd been moving around from place to place. It seemed like every before we were living in Jody, we were renting. I was out of college, and we were just kind of went from uh we were in North Carolina and South Carolina for a couple of years, and then moved back. And it would just seem like, it just something that here in West Virginia, there's not a lot to do as far as your income goes. I mean, we kind of wanted to look at it as maybe doing something other than coal mining, and see what we could do, because we knew that the area was beautiful and it was going to build up. The New River, like you said, wasn't even a state national park then, but it was close enough to still, bring some people in this way. We didn't know a lot about rafting. Neither me or my husband had anything to do with kayaking before we
So
bought this
you
place.
never did
I
either of
had
the
never
rivers?
went down the river, and I had no desire
Really?
whatsoever to be in. Because I always told everybody I can swim, in a pool or lake, but you put me in a washing machine type environment, I'm probably going to freak out. And but since then, I mean, um, we both, me and my husband, have went down the river. I was going to say, when you were telling your story, his very first time was with some boaters that were here. Didn't really know them real well, but it was kind of like one of those, well, tourists do it all the time. James, we'll take you down. It had rained that night before, just like buckets. And literally, it's like 2,800 CFS is their normal uh, um, height, levels that they run. That day it was running at 10,000 because of all of the rain from the Meadow River that
That was
joins
probably the
into it.
same when I was there. Yep.
He swam at least 7 times. Every major rapid, they were swimming, because the guys he went with were like hole hitters. He said he nearly drowned, I don't know how many times. And then after hearing his experience, I'm like, there's no way. But we have, what basically started our campground going were the boaters, the private, kayakers. We started in 2010 with our business, our camping business. We bought our farm in 2002, got some sheep by 2005, and our other animals by then. But we're struggling to find a market for the wool and everything. I had no idea about all these Facebook sites now, with people that like to spin their own wool and things. But the boaters started coming, and we started campground 2010, and by 2012 this little rowdy bunch of boaters had gotten kicked out by the Park Service at the lower campground that we used to be down there. And they actually shut the whole campground down, the Park Service little area there. So they had seen our sign, in a couple years before, and they contacted us, and they started their own little group. They called it the takeout below was called Swiss. I don't know if you remember that, if you were on the lower when you did the Gauley, but that was where the takeout is down there. And so when they got kicked out of that and they started here, they started calling it the Not Swiss Fest. And we actually had, my husband built a stage out in the field here, and we would have bands on the first weekend of Gauley season. And it was just a big party area. And we've gotten to know, like, the same boaters will come back, have been coming back since 2012. So I've seen kids grow up. I mean, literally, these two really hotshot boater kids were about 15 and 17 when they started coming. They're now 30, and
Wow.
20 some years old. He's one of them is the one, actually, I finally, he taught me into letting him take me down, and I trusted him enough because I knew he was really good from what everybody else had told me, and I had a blast. I really did. I've only been on there now. I've done 3 trips all together, but
So was it
I
the
was so excited.
upper
No,
or
it was
lower?
definitely the lower.
Oh, so you haven't
Definitely the lower.
experienced the dam release.
Yeah, the upper is definitely, you've got to have a little bit of experience to go through that. But I had, like I said, I grew up on this river. I'd walked the railroad tracks a little ways on the other side, and seen the wild part where there's no homes, there's nothing but nature. And it was just like, it was the beauty of it was just the canyon doors, those cliffs of the rocks and everything. And it was just amazing to me. I was so elated to see everything like that I hadn't seen for literally 50 years. I'm 57 now, so I was in my 50s when I went down the river for the first time. It was
That's
great.
great. Good for you.
I really have to give it, you know, we have to thank the boaters for what we have in this business right now. We do summertime camping, but it was nothing, until the word started getting out with them. And then I guess a lot of times too, I guess what we call us as an agritourism campground, we're kind of more the boutique camping thing, I guess. Few years ago, probably around 2010, there was a group called Hip Camp, where they're kind of really trying to get people out, mostly people that live in the cities and stuff, get them out in nature. And they started this thing with the land sharing, like farmers and different people that have, a good bit of acres, or even, I guess they do it with smaller acreages too, where you just share your land with people. And but we had already kind of started doing that, with our business before. And
Yep.
we were probably one of the first ones on the East Coast with the Hip Camp group that started that. They were out in California and stuff. But and then with the sheep and everything, it was a way to sell more of my wool products that I was making, craft wise. I have a little store where I'd put things up.
Let me just go back. So when you first bought the property, did you have a vision? Because obviously, your property extends, how many acres is it?
It's we started out with 120, and we've recently purchased a couple of, like, a 6-acre tract on the very top of the mountain, where you can actually look down and see canyon doors of the river.
Wow.
And then 3 acres out on the very right where you go down to the river at Mason Branch. We just bought that last year, and included that part into our campground as well. my husband's the visionary. I have to give him the props. He's the one that can see, much more than me. I'm more of a, I don't know. I'm just a living day to day kind of person, whereas he sees the future more.
That's
And
okay. It's a
he's
good
the one that actually,
combination.
I guess it is. Maybe that's what they say, opposites attract. One person keeps you down to the ground while the other person keeps you
Keeps
going
you
and
moving
motivated,
forward. Absolutely. There's
All
nothing
right.
wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. So
Yeah.
then at that time, because I want to talk to you about the current state of the different campsites, but at that time, were you envisioning campsites or you said you got the sheep. Did you how did the
Hmm.
sheep come into play? And I know there's two types of sheep that you have.
Hmm.
So kind of
Uh,
give me like at that time in the very beginning, how did the sheep come into play? Like what was the vision there?
like I said, we weren't farmers, neither one of us, but here we are in a farm, and we had this huge 2-story barn up there, and we were like, well, we're gonna have to get something, and we've got all this acreage here that we need cleared constantly, and I, being an animal lover, didn't want anything that I was going to have to sell for slaughter, just because I get so attached to my animals. So we were like, okay, let's think about sheep and wool, and that kind of. And my husband's family actually had raised some sheep over in Rome County, where they're from. So we were like, well, okay, maybe that's a sign. We'll start with that. And
Okay.
I guess really, I probably didn't research the wool industry like I should have back then, because, like I said, it was hard for me to find the market for it at the beginning, and that's how I actually got into felting. Was I contact up like somehow I found a wool guild here in West Virginia, and a lady that does felting is like, well, how about I come down and maybe we can do a deal where I teach you how to felt and I could get some of the wool in return. I'm like, sounds like a good idea to me,
Yeah, that
and maybe
sounds
that'll
great.
start some kind of market.
Yeah,
So she
absolutely.
actually, that was years ago, and that's kind of how I got started. And then one of the band members' wives that had been here for Gauley Fest, she's a spinner and knitter, and then she told me about all these different websites or Facebook groups for people that look to spin. And I was like, after that, it was just like opened up. And then, of course, I guess the campground came about. My husband, that was my husband's idea too, to, if we bring our own market in here, as opposed to trying to find, these places to sell them out in town and stuff, because I guess maybe the primitives weren't quite up to par yet, like they were, when they took off back in
Yeah.
the, I guess, well, when they actually started coming around. But primitives were like a big thing there for a while, so that's kind of when I started making more of the felty kind of things.
So how many sheep did you have then and do you have now?
Oh wow, yeah, we had a lot. Well, we started out with um, 2 merino ewes and a Jacob ewe with her baby. And one of the merino ewes was pregnant, which gave us our ram for the first time. And of course, we kind of added a few more as the time went on. But we've had up to 30, I think.
Oh wow.
It was yeah, that was quite a bit. And we used to sell, the rams and things, and that became kind of hard to do too, because you never knew who you were going to sell them to. It was hard to, people just don't want a lot of rams. But the worst thing was when I hate to say, I actually sold some of my beautiful rams because the Jacobs and the Merinos had the beautiful horns. Sold them to a guy that told me, he was, oh yes, I love the big sheep with the horns. We're going to take them to this farm here in West Virginia, and they'll have the best food. And when I found out later that it was an actual hunting camp, and he was
Oh,
actually,
mm.
yeah, my
That
little
must have
sheep that
broke
would
your
walk up
heart.
to you
Mm.
were going to be hunted. So that kind of put me off even against that. So since
Yeah.
then, we have been actually trying to not have any babies. We're kind of keeping we've got one ram still, but we haven't had any new additions in the last 4 years. Somebody always gets through the fence, it seems like. And you end up with one or two. But in the last 3 years, we've been able to not
That's
keep
funny.
anyone pregnant. And we're down to 14 ewes and the one ram. And they're a tight little herd, and most of them are geriatric now. As you can imagine, I've got some. In fact, that first, the out of my original sheep, the baby Jacob, she just died 2 years ago.
Oh.
So she was like almost 16 years old when she passed. And now I'm like, I guess the youngest one I have is about 3. And so, but yeah,
Wow.
I'd say once, I mean, it's just, you can only sell so many fleeces, and then you end up with a bunch of them in the top of the barn, just gathering dust and spiders and
Yeah.
whatever else wants to make its home in it.
So tell me, like, you obviously didn't have sheep in the past. Like, what's something I don't know about sheep, or, like something that, like, how are they as,
Uh,
I don't want to say pets, but I don't know if what the right word
well,
is.
something I never knew about sheep. Something I never knew about sheep was that they don't have teeth on the top. They only have a
Okay.
plate, and
Oh,
so their teeth when they graze it. Yeah, I know. And one of our sheep, actually, there's something called parrot mouth, which is basically an overbite, and so their teeth don't line up with the plate. And we have one that was her name's Polly, Polly the parrot, or parrot mouth. But she
aw.
she was always she needs extra tall grass, in fact, and she's always the one that's getting out of the fence because she's always searching for that. So we just kind of let her go. So when campers come and they're like, she'll be out there meandering right there, like, there's a sheep out here. We're like, yeah, that's Polly. Don't worry about her. We know.
That's part of the adventure.
But, yeah, yeah.
Aw.
That's probably one of the things I know, and that I didn't know personally. We didn't know. We Everything we learned off the internet or off a book. We had a book that was kind of told us about different things. Uh we used to dock their tails, that people always, that was what the book said. But after a while we stopped doing that because I don't know, it just wasn't really necessary, we found. They say that it's to keep fly strike, because when they poop, that gets on their tail and everything. But we just never had any problem with that happening, so we stopped docking your tails. I don't think you that's
Hmm.
one thing I didn't know. I always assumed that little sheep had no tail, just a little stub there. But apparently they have some long tails that I never knew about.
Didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, when
Interesting.
you think about sheep, you just think maybe it's just grow that. I always thought it would grew that way. It was just a little short tail that never
Right.
grew. But obviously those were always cut off. So, but,
Do you have any other animals on the property?
we have one miniature horse right now. His name is Peanut, and he's our social animal. When we have campers, everything, he loves people. He comes down, they feed him apples, and he'll just stand there and let him pet him. He loves little kids. He's really good with little kids and everything. My sheep are definitely antisocial. When they see people, they just take off running the other way. And the only way I can get them to come and let people see them is like to have a bucket of corn, and even then it's only
Food.
one or two will be brave enough, and the rest of them stand there like, oh my gosh.
Really?
And of course we have chickens. I have chickens and I sell those to campers. And I've had bukus of dogs and cats. Right now we're dogless. My little Chihuahua passed away last August, and we just
Oh,
haven't had the heart to go and get another one yet. I've got 5 cats though, and they do their part on taking care of the vermin and everything. But But that's and we have had a good bit of chickens in the past. They used to be free range. We had probably 40 chickens running around here, but the coyotes kind of decimated our chicken
Ooh.
population, and we started getting I got some what are they called, the leghorns, and they're white birds. So we actually have a pen now then that they stay in. It's being out here in the wild and in the country, it's really hard to have them free range just because you've got so many raccoons and just coyotes and everything else that's going to pick them off. So we do have the chickens, and we our very first farm animal was Buddy the goat, and he was a Nubian. My
Okay.
gosh, it's like I said, we never knew he was our very first farm animal, and my cousin actually found him. She said, "I found someone that's got a goat that we're wanting to get rid of." He was apparently raised by himself, so he did not have the herd mentality. You were his herd. I mean, people were his herd, so he wanted to be around you constantly. He was as big as our miniature horse. Literally,
Wow.
everyone that saw him were like, "That's the biggest goat we've ever seen." When he would raise up off of his on his back legs, he was over my head. He's like, and he had
That's
this
big.
thing with me. Yeah, it was. It's a really old video. It's actually on like the tape video of him and me having a little fight between us where he's rosing up and I'm just like playing with him and stuff. But yeah, he he had this thing with me. I guess I was the competition, but who was going to be the head goat or something, because he knew James was the head goat. My husband, he knew he was the head goat, and it was between me and him was going to be second. And he would never leave me alone. We had such a love-hate relationship.
Oh,
But I
God.
have to credit him for being our he cleared everything when we, like I said, he was the first one here. Everything, the fields were pretty grown up when we bought the place, and we just tied him to a big tire and just let him just move around the field, and he ate. He took care of everything. So, Buddy was our very first. I think we got the horses. I think we got two miniature horses. That was Peanut and a mare, and they had two babies. But all three of my girls have passed. Um,
Oh.
I'm not really sure what happened. I think it may have been something hereditary because they all, died the same way. But Peanut, he's still with us, and like I said, he's what everybody wants to pet when they come because he's so friendly.
Aw.
He really does. He'll like look forward to people seeing. And my little Chihuahua was like that too. She was the friendliest Chihuahua you've ever met, and she would just get so excited when she'd see people come in again. I gotta go
Aw.
meet him.
Aw.
It's been a rough. I mean, we've learned a lot. Sheep are hard to take care of, and they really are, especially when they're lambing, because they always have their lambs on the coldest day of the winter. And being in West Virginia too, it's like I guess it's more uh, humidity in the air, and wool sheep, especially the fine wool like the merino, don't do real well in humidity. So sometimes some of my sheep will be green from moss and mold on the top of
Oh,
their
no.
wool. Yeah, if you
Mm.
have like a really wet, hot summer, they'll kind of
Oh,
get
that's so
moldy.
funny.
Overall, we've been pretty happy here, and
You have how many camping sites on, because your property's big. I looked at the map, and so you have a bunch of different camping sites throughout the property.
we have 8 sites here on the
Okay.
property. We like to make it to where everyone, if we usually don't have the whole place full through the summer except for on holidays. On the holidays, maybe every site will be booked, and then even then, we want people to be able, like, they're here by themselves. In fact, that's how we started off. Was when you booked, you were the only people here. We only had one site, and we always had them down in the main field. And it's just been in the last couple of years that we've added actually more sites to do that. Just because whenever you do that, when there was, we were like, well, we're missing out on some income here, when we have to turn people away because on the holidays, we get more people, but we wanted them people to have that really close connection with nature, not having to have hear somebody's generator or
Right.
something, somebody just playing their music too loud or something like that. So, and we like to talk to people. We tell them about things that we've. Most people say we need to write a book if you tell them about all the stories that have happened to us here. It's been a ride, I just have to say, as far as living this far out, what you encounter.
So just back to the camping for a minute. Like, so do people do traditional camping with tents, or are they bringing campers? Like, what is the protocol?
Mostly tent camping or vehicle camping. We have had a few people that bring like little pop-ups, or we've had bigger ones as well. It's the road coming in here, the county road that I was telling you about is a gravel road for about three
Uh,
and a half miles. So it's not really
okay,
conducive to our big RVs or
got it.
35-foot
Yeah.
campers or something. Now we have had them, and they're usually like pretty surprised. Although I have told people, one year during during the Gauley season, we had some friends that had been here before, so they knew about it. But they actually had a friend who had traveled from San Francisco with a 43-foot fifth wheel camper that came in here. Actually, literally, they had to have like their friends were like spotting them all the way out of, because during Gauley season, that county road is packed with private boaters and all these commercial companies with their buses. And if you remember anything about coming out here, it's a very I mean it's not very wide as far as getting two buses and a fifth wheel camper through.
Yeah.
In fact, some of the boaters that were here that year, it was the first year when we were going to have the music, and they were like, "My gosh, who did you get to play? Aerosmith or something?" Because it was such a
That's so
we
funny.
were really surprised. But yeah, it's mostly tent camping and
Okay.
vehicle camping.
And when people are there, they obviously are, some of them will go kayaking or rafting. And obviously, you must have a lot of hiking in the area and nature related
Well,
things that
we're
people
really
do.
close now to we've always been close to the New River Gorge, and now it's a national park. So
Okay.
that brings a lot of people. And also Summersville Lake is really close. It's the largest lake in West Virginia, and it gets a lot of, boating business and stuff. And rock climbers too. A lot of
Ah,
rock
okay.
climbers in the area. They do the New River Gorge, and then there's a lot of them that do Summersville Lake. There's the big rock crags over there. Yeah, in fact, most of our summertime campers, most of them don't even know that the Gauley River is here. And I mean, it's like we have to tell them about it. And you're like, because the Gauley is so different from the summer to Gauley season, because during the summer, it's a really low river. I mean, you can see all those rocks that you're going over, they're the size of a house in the river that you're going over during Gauley season. It's just really beautiful and wild. I mean, that's
Yeah.
we just really want to get people out and to see the West Virginia that we know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the important piece, is to really give people that experience. I just want to, I'm making an assumption that people have a clue of what we're talking about. So when we talk about Gauley season, explain that to people, because I know it because I lived it, and I had that amazing experience. But if you haven't experienced it or lived it, or from the area, they probably have no clue what we're talking about.
Well, the Gauley is actually dammed by the Summersville Lake, and first weekend after Labor Day, it's the Corps of Engineers dam control lake. So every fall they'll start releasing the water out of the lake. And that creates the class 5 and 6 rapids on this side of the dam. So it like I said, it increases the, I'm not sure, it's like probably down to like 5 to 600 CFS during the summer, and it goes up to 2,600 during the Gauley season. And they do that for four, it's usually Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, out of every weekend for about 6 weekends, 6 to 7. It culminates with, it's always the first weekend after Labor Day, and it goes to the third weekend in October, which coincides with Bridge Day over at Fayetteville, which is where those people jump off the New River Gorge Bridge.
Yeah, let's get to that. We'll talk about that. Hold that thought, because that's a whole different topic. I want to talk about that more. So explain though those dam releases, which is the upper Gauley. That's like where, so some people don't even do the upper Gauley, but if you do the upper Gauley, you literally put in your either your kayak or your raft in these massive rapids.
Yeah.
And that put in is very coordinated and very intense. That's what I remember, the intensity of getting that raft in, getting it in the right position to start off. It was very intense. Like your adrenaline is pumping from like the second like when you see it, it's very intense to see. I'll try to put some pictures in, when I do
the water coming out of the big holes just shooting out of there. Like,
it's intense. It's like, it's like, when you see it, and then obviously when you experience it, you can understand. It's no unlike any other river I've ever done, because I've done a bunch of different rivers, mostly on the East Coast, a few on the West Coast, but it definitely is an intense feeling when you're putting in those conditions. The lower Gauley was not as intense, at least my experience. It has intensity. Obviously, we missed some of it because the river was running so high, but that upper Gauley put in is definitely something to experience.
Yeah, we're basically right at the middle Gauley. They would put in at the dam where that water is, and that's like you said, the Meadow River runs into it right below where you put in, and they take it. Yeah, it's Pillow Rock, all those crazy rafting.
I remember
holes.
that.
Yeah,
I remember that name.
And if you go on during when they have Gauley Fest, which is American Whitewater, holds a big fundraiser in town, and literally there are people from all over the country come here. The river is just crowded, and there's crazy people jumping on your boats and everything else off of that rock. But they come down to the middle, and then that's when they take out, and we're right at the top of the hill from the takeout.
Oh,
so
perfect.
And then just basically, if you start, if you we're up on top of the mountain, so we're not like, they can't like really walk right out of the river. But the more athletic ones will climb, walk up the road, up the hill, and just bring their stuff up and don't have to worry about it. Come get their vehicle and then go down and get their boats. But if you wanted to do the lower, we're only 2 miles from that put in. So
nice.
We're so conveniently located for all the boaters. I mean, it really is the perfect place for Gauley season. We just hope, want to more people during the summer. So, even though you're not going to get that thrill, you can still go kayaking at New River because it runs all the time.
Now, New River, like I had mentioned, I was there in the spring and it was pretty intense and cold. I remember it was cold, but I know that the New River they were promoting a lot of summer types of stuff on the New River. But the New River, one of, I guess, the intense pieces is that waterfall, like the end. Isn't there like a real big waterfall at the end? I remember going over something.
So. I'm not sure what it's called, but because I've never done the New, I've only done the lower Gauley. So
it wasn't as intense, like consistent intensity as the Gauley, and obviously doesn't have a put in like the Gauley, but I remembered this waterfall at the end. I think I still have my video from that. It's probably VHS, but I just remember it being really intense. But we were so enthralled by it. We were like, oh, and then someone told us about the Gauley, and we're like, oh, we're coming. And we literally, I think, did the spring and then the fall of the following
Uh-huh.
in the same
Oh
year.
wow.
Yeah,
So
it
did
was
you actually
great.
go over that waterfall on the new? Did you actually go over it?
I remember I don't know if we went over it, but somehow we got through that area. But I remember watching the kayakers do their thing over that waterfall.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know if there was like a
Uh-huh.
side thing where you kind of don't go over that water. Like I just
Uh-huh.
remember there being something, and I remember it being very intense. They stop you before everyone has to kind of like, focus on their job on the boat. And yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that. And we also did the Yak or the Upper Yak. I don't know if I'm
Yeah,
pronouncing it
it's
right.
I think it's actually
It's a very thin
yeah, it runs
river.
from Pennsylvania to Maryland, I think.
I thought there was a
Like
part
part of it's
I'm
in
not
Maryland, like the
yeah, it was
upper Yawks in Pennsylvania and the lower Yawks in Maryland.
a
Is it like
very
that?
technical river, very thin and very intense. And
Uh-huh.
actually, I almost drowned on that river. It pulled, we got thrown out. I got pulled under the boat, and you know how
Oh,
they tell you to, follow the boat to the edge. It was sucking me down so intensely
oh,
that I couldn't get up. And I remember the feeling because my lungs started burning, and I was just like, I can't
uh-huh,
get up. And my husband at the time he had gotten back on the boat, and he saw my, like, whatever I was wearing, the color, and he put
uh-huh.
his hand down and he just pulled me up. And I'll never
Oh
forget that
wow.
first breath. That was like the scariest, most intense moment whitewater rafting. And I don't want to scare people because it isn't like that, like it isn't, things do happen, but it is serious, and
Yeah,
people
it
have
is
to
serious.
take it seriously,
Mhm.
and be very present when they're out there on these rivers. But
Right.
all worked out fine. I think that was an overnight trip too. But
Uh,
we had so much fun doing those trips. I mean, the the best part is when you are away from civilization and
uh-huh,
when you're in that gorge and you see the wildlife and the birds, and just you don't hear anything, like you just hear nature. It was
uh-huh.
beautiful. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I highly encourage people to have this experience, whether it's the Gauley or the New or whatever. And like when we camped the overnight trip with the Gauley, even the camping was so much fun. Like, and we weren't
Uh-huh.
avid campers, but that experience was just amazing. So
Uh-huh.
I definitely encourage people to do that. So let's talk about the bridge.
No.
So talk about
The
what
New
that
River.
is. Yeah, because that's a sight to see.
It is. It's very iconic now. West. I think it's on the state quarter even. But yeah, it's like the longest span arch or something east of the Mississippi. I think it was built in probably the 70s, 80s. Before that, you actually had to travel all the way down to the bottom of that canyon and then cross the river down there and then all the way back up. So it really took out, made a lot of travel a lot easier. But yeah, every year, and like I said, it's the third weekend in October, they shut the bridge down. It used to be just one side of it, but after 9/11, they shut the whole bridge down for that day. And people go out on the bridge and they even have like this like little catapult. Some of them, they will actually catapult people, the base jumpers, I guess that's what they are, the parachuters. And I guess, and they're from all over the world, will come here to be catapulted off of that bridge and down into the river. And now they're even starting to where you can rappel off the river, off of the bridge. And the Park Service actually has now, you can take a tour. They've got like a catwalk under the bridge so
Oh,
that you
wow.
can walk. Yeah, yeah. My sister-in-law did it. I don't think I could because that's some serious height right there. And I mean, you're tethered in and everything, but
Yeah,
still
serious height.
serious height. And but you can do it. You can walk all the way across the bridge underneath. And so and it's I guess there's just plenty of hiking trails, lots of beautiful views of the bridge and everything over there. And like I said, it is the newest national park, and that's gotten us some more customers too. The people that do national parks, where they like to visit every national park and everything, and
Absolutely.
we try to get that out and let them know they don't have to. We're only about 30 minutes away as the crow. I mean, as 15 minutes away as a crow flies, 30 minutes away if you have to drive it. And we're also close to Babcock State Park, which has that. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Has that. It's another iconic scene of West Virginia with the grist mill and the creek going by it. That's another has a lot of hiking there too, and Hawks Nest State Park. Like you said, this section of West Virginia is just really so scenic. We've got so many things to look at as far as if you're wanting to be outdoors.
Right.
In
Absolutely.
Fayetteville, where the new River Gorge is, it's really opened up. They've got like bike trails, and of course, like I said, they've got the people that like to climb the rocks and the gorge there. There's within an hour away from us, and then you can always just come back and be with in the middle of nowhere with nobody around you. Complete solitude and peace and quiet, other than a sheep bag.
You mentioned, I just want to ask you a few questions about, how you're getting the word out there about what, your opportunity and where people can stay. You mentioned that website that you were on.
Hip camp.
Okay. Is that still up and running?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is. I book through that, but I also have my own website too. It's tawneyfarm.com, and basically we're just getting organically. I mean, just word of mouth kind of thing. A lot of it, I do what I can on social media. I didn't grow up I'm not a techie as far as that goes. So what I do is pretty basic, but the Instagram, Facebook kind of thing, social media, and then just basically word of mouth. We've actually started getting more repeat summertime campers as well.
That's great.
The boaters for sure. They're always we've got them coming back year after year. But we've had probably at least half a dozen campers that are coming back through the summer that had nothing. They're just here to be camping.
And you said you do like for Gauley weekend, or do you have a concert, or you bring in
First
bands
weekend.
or something?
Yeah, we try to bring in at least one band. In the past, we've had more. It's kind of hard with I need to hire some more people because it's just the two of us taking care of checking people in because they're coming in at all hours. I mean they because they're coming from, gosh, we get them from all over, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, New York. Even we've had some people from Maine, and a lot of times the ones around the tri-state area, they'll get off work on Friday evening and then head our way, and they'll get in here around 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that.
Oh.
But so it does it wears you out, but yeah, we've tried to get some local bands and stuff in here just to make it more fun for the boaters. We like
Right. Yeah. Give them
they're
a little
they're
bit
they're
more of
a
an
they're a party kind of
experience.
crowd. They kind of like to,
Yeah.
but nobody, you know that it's when they're here, it's like basically it's just festival camping. It's not the we don't have the sites at that time. They just all kind of pile into our main field there, and they all know each other. They're a big family. They got their river family, as they call them, and even though they're from all kinds of different states, they've met up on a river here or there, and they all know each other, and they kind of uh, they kind of police themselves too. Somebody's getting out of hand, they'll say, "Hey, calm down," or do this or that. So, but we haven't had any problems with them. They've always been, a good group of people.
You mentioned Fayetteville, you said, is the town,
Mm-hmm.
the city. Okay.
Fayetteville for New River Gorge,
Okay. So just in
Yeah,
general,
Summersville is closer to me.
is okay. So have you seen, I mean, I presume over the years, I mean, I just saw it from watching where we stayed, how they've evolved. Has the area really grown? Are there more restaurants and places that are catering? I mean, have you really seen a significant lift in visitors to the area over the years?
Yeah, oh, definitely over the years. Yeah, for sure for Fayetteville because they are really progressive area. Um, Summersville, they've kind of, I mean, they do the big festival for American whitewater for Gauley season. But as far as tourism, they're not as progressive, I would say, as Fayetteville is. Definitely, the whole area has grown in the 20 years we've been here.
Does it excite you or does it scare you a little bit? Because, it must be, it's like this
Well,
double-edged sword because it
it
brings in
is.
people, but yet you don't,
It brings in
you don't,
people.
yeah, you don't want it to become, you don't want it to lose its charm and its,
uh,
nature filled, like the essence of
uh,
what it is, and it's
right.
sometimes when you're getting too many tourists, it can be challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, like these people up in New England when um, the leaves change. I saw that where the people are just like, going in their
Yeah.
yards and everything. Yeah, yeah. I don't think I can handle that. But I don't think it'll probably really be a few years before that happens here. I would think. I mean, it could. Somebody might come out here and it blow up. I'm not sure, but um, I'm not really too worried about
Yeah.
it reaching us out here. Maybe.
Okay. And you had mentioned that you just purchased a few more pieces of property, and I guess there's like, so you have more campsites and people can
Hmm.
spread out a little bit more. Do you have any other plans for the
Hmm.
future, or are you kind of stable and you're just trying to, move forward as is?
Like I said, my husband is the more future thinking person, but I mean he's just he's full of ideas as far as that goes. But yeah, we would like to definitely, we'd like to uh, that 3 acres out there. We'd like to see the Park Service have more, I guess, visibility out here,
Okay.
because they there isn't there's no welcome center for the Gauley River National Recreation Area. There's nothing
Oh,
like that.
really?
There's oh yeah, I mean, I guess they kind of take care of it at the new River Gorge visitor center. There's probably information about it there, but as far as something being here, there's not. I mean, the rangers come during Gauley season, but during the rest of the year, you might see a Park Service vehicle out here, every now and then just to check on things. But we'd like to, definitely, we'd like to actually, develop that 3 acres that we just bought into something like that. Or, I mean, he's even talked about making his own welcome center, to the Gauley, and maybe having some kind of a kiosk or some kind of, just information about the whole area, it says, like I said, we don't get a lot of care from the Park Service. It doesn't
Well,
seem
but
like out here.
that's a good point though, that I mean, if it doesn't exist, sometimes you have to do it yourself or influence them by doing something and then maybe they'll
Yeah.
gain an interest, especially if it is a place
Uh-huh.
that people start coming to. I remember in when I was
Mhm.
reading your write-up, you had written something about the history of the area. I know a Civil War battle took place.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty neat. Yeah, the Carnifex Ferry State Park. I don't think I did mention it. It's right close to the Summersville Lake, and actually part of where Pillow Rock is. Actually, you can go to Carnifex Ferry State Park, take one of their trails down to Pillow Rock, and
Oh,
watch
wow.
the boaters go by. Yeah, and
Very
but
cool.
it was a big um, can Civil War battleground. There is a nice building out there. I guess it's I don't know if it was an original house or farmhouse there, but it's a museum where they have a lot of like where they found like the balls that they shot at each other from the muskets and stuff like that,
Cool.
and cannonballs and things. But yeah, it was apparently it was a big strategic thing of crossing the river there. Somehow somebody escaped by going across the river at night, and there were a lot of skirmishes around our area. In fact, they said that someone may have been kidnapped from the little area here, right here. I believe there's a church at the top of the hill. It's called Arnett Methodist Church. It was built in um, 1908, I think. But apparently there have been schoolhouses in this area right close to us. My husband's actually trying to find some history on that because we've heard that one of the schoolhouses was on that 3 acre property we just bought,
Oh,
and he was
wow.
trying to find some information about that. He's actually dug up where he's been cleaning up the property. He's found like big stones like that may have probably been the foundation of part of it. And but yeah, it's uh apparently there were a lot of skirmishes through here. Some gentleman had done the history of Panther Mountain. That's the road that I'm on in the little area. He mentions all the original settlers and has all their names and who married who back in that thing. And I think he's the one that mentions that's where I got the information about all the actual skirmishes that were out here in our area.
That's great.
We've actually found some places up on our property that look like could have been headstones
Oh, wow.
that we don't know anything about, as far as the families that have been here before. There's only been like the one family. We'll see. The Legg family were the original people that bought this farm back in the mid 1800s. And it was like I've done a lot of research on our property just from doing our own surveying of our where our property lines and things are. I've done a lot of deed research. The history of Panther Mountain was that supposedly one of those people that were in here way back in the settling days had shot 2 deer up on top of the mountain, and he couldn't carry both of them back, so he hung one up in a tree. And when he returned to get the second deer, there were 2 panthers circling the deer, and he shot one and it enraged the other one, and he couldn't get his musket loaded in time, so he ended up just throwing some of the powder in the cat's face or somehow, and somehow ended up getting it loaded again in time to shoot the other panther. So that's how the name Panther Mountain came apart.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's still pretty wild out here. We've got I know we've got some bear on the property, and probably coyotes and other things, but you just it's hard to tell what's running around out here, to tell you the truth.
Well, that's part of the experience, though, as long as people are
We actually,
aware.
yeah, we have in the 20 years that we've been here. I mean, we've seen evidence of bear, as far as their scat and things, but we haven't had any. We've only had 3 close encounters in the 20 years that we've lived here,
Wow,
of
that's
them
not
being,
bad.
close to our home. So you got
Wow.
to take, you do with things which to keep them away. As far as like we've never. We told people say, oh, you got to raise some bees or whatever. Like, no, bees bring bears.
Oh, yeah,
They'll
you're
they'll
right.
be
I didn't
after the
even think
honey, and
about
we don't
that.
want bears. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just got to keep all your feet up to where they're not smelling it and stuff, so and they don't want to come
Yeah.
around. And it's a very rich area as far as history goes, and beauty altogether. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. It really,
it
I
just hasn't
mean,
really been developed. We're still in there's still the big fields of old farms out here, and we're probably um, one of the more undeveloped parts of as far as housing and goes. So
okay. Well, that's nice, actually.
it is. It is. My closest neighbor is what, about 2 miles away. So
That's not that bad. That's a nice
yeah,
distance.
it's not. Yeah.
Mine is much closer. But
Yeah.
no, I mean, like I said, I think I when I saw you on Instagram, I was like, this is so unique, and what a unique agritourism opportunity for people, especially if you're into rafting or kayaking and, the rivers, if you love the outdoors. And even if you don't do kayaking and rafting, I mean, the area is so rich in just outdoor activities and
It
unique,
is.
just unique outdoor activities. It's so
Mhm.
beautiful. It's just so majestic. People should definitely consider experiencing it at least once. And then to be able to stay on a property like yours just, makes it even that much better. It's just more authentic, than some of the
Well,
other.
we like to think so anyway.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited to see how things evolve and, keep me posted, and,
Oh, I
and just
definitely will.
keep doing what you're doing. Whatever you're doing is bringing people back, and that's what's important. But stay true to, what you want to evolve in this business, and hopefully your husband will just keep thinking and definitely focus on the history piece because
Uh-huh.
that's definitely attractive for people. I think people really like to learn
Uh-huh.
about that. It's something
Uh-huh.
that is a great opportunity for people. So,
Oh,
because
another one that we do is as far as and birding. I didn't even mention that bird.
yes,
If you,
bird watchers. Yes, you had mentioned that on the website.
yeah, yeah, I've got one of those, the Merlin app that identifies different birds, and I've actually made a little spreadsheet on it, and I'm up to
Oh,
at least
cool.
75 different species.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
this, yes, 75. So yeah, it's really, I love, especially in the spring. You just see so many different birds. We've got, birds of prey, and I even saw, one on my list was an osprey. I was like, wow, we've got an osprey out here. And I'm assuming that's probably helps having the lake close by, and and then the river and the big gorges and stuff. So
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, so then you're appealing to another whole population of people. So definitely all these pieces, add to the opportunity people have in coming there. So you're coming into New River season soon
Uh-huh.
in the spring.
You definitely are providing a good service here for us
Thank you.
agritourism people.
Thank you. Well, and keep me posted. Let me know how it goes, okay? I'm excited to
Okay, I
see how
sure
things evolve.
will. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Jen. All right. Bye
Take
bye.
care. I hope our AgriTourist podcast prompts you to think more about where your food comes from, whether it be your vegetables, fruits, meats, and even those sweet treats. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone you think may truly benefit from or be inspired by it. Visit us at agra-tourist.com. Until next time. So I was recently listening to one of the Grounded in Maine podcasts produced by Amy Fagan. The podcast is an open conversation about being mindful about how we show up in the world. It's focused on sustainability and how sustainability impacts every part of our life. What are some of the most important takeaways that people will get from your podcast?
One of the things that I hope that people will take away from the podcast is encouragement. Like, I want them to not feel like you have to spend thousands of dollars to be part of the solution, because, there are a lot of sustainable, things that say sustainability or sustainable, like solar panels or organic cotton and stuff like that. Like, some things are just more expensive because they have that tagline, that phrase or whatever. But there are so many ways that you can be sustainable. You just have to be a little bit creative. And so I'm putting out all these ideas that what people are doing, just to put the thought out there that we can all be part of it without going broke.
So how can people find your podcast?
My podcast is wherever podcasts are found. It is just called Grounded in Maine. I also have my Instagram is where I am most active, and the Instagram handle is Grounded in Maine Podcasts.